Bring it in, recruits, bring it in. I know it's been a while since we've had camp, but school got really busy for me over the last few weeks, so I'm sorry I couldn't provide any content during that stretch. But I'm back, and I want to pick up right where we left off with the healing role. Except I don't think we're ready to move on just yet. I want to go over the basics of macro writing, which will make playing effectively as a healer much more enjoyable and easy. In fact, several players in my guild were writhing in agony over my poor healing skills, which were on display for all to see in the previous video, mainly because I wasn't using healing macros. If you aren't familiar with what macros are, either inside the game or out, I'll start at the very beginning. Macros are a way to get increased functionalities out of a key press. For instance, one key press might do more than one thing. As an example, a warrior could macro, charge, and hamstring into one key, which would allow the warrior to charge while far away, but hamstring when they are up close. The reason why this works is charge can only be used from far away because you're charging into combat, and hamstring can only be used while up close. Today, we're going to be covering what is known as Mouseover macroing, which is an interesting technique which is of particularly good use to healer characters. So let's jump into the game and I'll show you what it's all about. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is load up the game and enter world as Jalum, which is the holy paladin we were working with in the previous healing video. As you can see, I left Jalum over here by the training dummy so I can show you what these macros will do. What we want to do is start off by pressing escape and then clicking macros. I've decided to make these macros Jalum specific, which means that only Jalum will have access to them. To do that, I click on the Jalum specific macros tab. As you can see, I've already started writing a macro for Flash of Light. However, I wasn't quite sure the exact syntax, so I had to look it up and found it on a web page. So I'll go ahead and copy that in here from the web page, and I'll also link the web page that I found it on in the description to give proper credit. Now, what I copied in here was a template, which means that I have to remove the words spell name and replace it with the actual name of the spell. In this case, it'll be Flash of Light. When typing the name of a spell inside a macro, it must match what is in the spell book or what is on the tooltip. As you can see, the of in Flash of Light has a lowercase o, so I need to make sure that matches up. Question is, what do the lines in this macro do? Well, the first one is pretty simple. This allows our macro to display the tooltip of the spell that we name on the action bar when we mouse over it, just like a regular Flash of Light would do. So it's not a huge deal not to have this line in there, but it's just kind of nice to add it in. I usually add it in on all the spells that I macro. The second line is really the meat of the macro. This line will determine whether or not you're mousing over a friendly target, and if so, it'll use the ability. If not, it'll use it on the target. Also, it can decide whether or not you're targeting a friendly player, and if so, you'll use the spell on the target. If not, you'll use the spell on yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and clone this macro for a couple other healing abilities as I comment on the significance of this macro and why you would want to use it. So what this lets me do is it allows me to maintain a target but also heal my group members. As you can see, I'm able to heal the Brave who is practicing on this targeting dummy right next to me without losing my target. So it makes it so that I don't have to erratically switch targets every time I want to do damage or heal, so on and so forth. The real significance of this is that it works on raid frames and it works on party frames. If you're not familiar with what a party frame is, it's exactly what you saw in the previous video. Down at the bottom on my screen, I have all my group members in a panel that shows me their current health, so I know who to heal. These Mouseover macros will work by mousing over one of those player panels in the party frame. So it makes it just so much easier to add that extra support in the way of damage while not having to constantly switch targets. I do want to mention here that some players prefer to use interface add-ons in order to handle this sort of thing, especially for healing. However, there are two main reasons why I am not going to do that right now. The first reason is that I believe that user interface customization is a more advanced technique, and we are not there just yet. Also, not every player has the capability with their hardware to be able to run the game and add-ons on top of it. So to that end, I think macros are the best option for where we are. At this moment, I realized I hadn't actually swapped Holy Radiance out for the macro that I made for Holy Radiance. So once I realized that, I'm able to switch that out and use the macro accordingly. Before I swap it out, however, I am going to clone the macro one more time so I can use it with the Holy Shock spell. You may have noticed that I haven't actually hit the target dummy very much, and that's because the target dummy is technically much higher level than Jalum, but I'm going to go ahead and use some more rotations on it and some more heals on the Brave so you can get a sense of why this is so useful, and then I'll go ahead and wrap up this week's video. So there you have it, recruits. That's Mouseover macroing in a nutshell. I'm not sure when I'll be able to put out more content because it is getting to be exam time and I've got a ton of studying and still some projects left over to do. So I will see you when I see you, and I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope it was useful and gives some better techniques for when you're actually healing. Have a great one and keep practicing, guys.